What's good, world? I'm Stephen Lewis, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Stephen Lewis on air, and I want to talk about Titans today for a couple of different reasons. The superhero genre has pretty much been big for a while. It has gotten bigger in the last 10 years, but it's become our form of entertainment in a lot of ways. I guess what Westerns were in the 50s and 60s, what kung fu movies were in the 70s, action movies in the 80s. Now, superhero movies have kind of been the go-to, and that's bled into TV shows for a while. And, you know, the Arrowverse, as it's affectionately called, was CW's attempt at superheroes, led by Stephen Amell's portrayal of Oliver Queen in the Green Arrow. It spawned a bunch of different shows, all of them now coming to an end because there's been a lot of changes at Warner Brothers over the last few years. Different owners, different ideas, and now here we are again resetting this universe. I think the one thing that Marvel has had going for it, even though they've been kind of, up until Guardians of the Galaxy, been on a little bit of a slide, they've had a consistent plan all the way through. Same person in charge, and everything is kind of stuck to that form. DC, on the other hand, has been kind of all over the place. Separate TV world from their movie universe, and it's been really hard to follow if you're a casual fan. And Titans gets its name from Teen Titans, which essentially was a comic book, very popular comic book, 70s and 80s, about essentially all the sidekicks of the big superheroes, like Robin and Superboy, and all these characters kind of got together and created this teen team who was kind of like a junior version of the Justice League. So Titans has kind of been in the works for a while before it finally came to fruition when HBO Max launched. It started out as DC Universe Online. So you had all this content for DC Universe. They created all these shows. Some of them lasted, some of them didn't. I am amazed that Titans managed to go 4 years. And it was kind of consistent in one thing. It never really felt like it flowed the right way from a writing standpoint. All the beats seemed off. As a DJ, it's kind of like you're trying to mix a song together and the beat is just off a little bit. And that's what Titans was for me. It was cool to see some of these characters come online, and you took part of the core cast, combined them with different characters, and created this version of the Titans that we get to see on TV. And they did do some things right. They definitely did certain things right, per se, but it was just kind of, it started off wanting to be dark and gritty, and they used swear words, and that didn't really happen in, superhero TV shows for a while. The infamous F Batman line in the trailer, and I do think Brendan Thwaites was cast pretty well as Dick Grayson. I'm not sure they captured the spirit of Dick Grayson quite the right way, but he was a decent choice for that. It was an odd pairing when they added in Minka Kelly and Alan Richardson as Hawk and Dove, but that first season was kind of weird, and then the season finale, it all ended differently. I can't remember for the life of me why it ended the way it did, but the original season finale was supposed to be different. Curran Walters was the first time we got to see Jason Todd on the show, and it was a lot of trying to get away from Batman, but still referencing Batman. They took some liberties with some of the characters, Starfire being one of them. In the first season, she started out as like some kind of, spy slash stripper slash assassin that didn't know who she was. And, they were under a TV budget, so her powers were kind of hard to do. And then they had Raven, who, when you pick her up, she's still trying to figure out who and what she is. And I thought Tegan Croft did an okay job with her. Beast Boy, throughout the entire thing, they never truly got right. If you are a fan of these characters, I would encourage you to watch the animated Young Justice version of them that's on HBO Max. They do a much better job portraying Beast Boy. And then with the second season, that was probably my favorite season, where the first season was very disjointed. The second season kind of told the story of the backstory of the Titans. We got to see Donna Troy, or Connor Leslie's version of Donna Troy, in the first season, and I thought she was cool. I wanted more of her, and during the second season we got a little bit of a backstory. You got to see Aqualad. You got to see a better idea of who the original Titans were. And the second season was probably my favorite as far as how they did Deathstroke. I will believe the Manu Bennett version of the Deathstroke on TV is probably the best one. But they do bring in those characters, and they tried to adapt like some of the Judas Contract, which is a famous comic book story. They try to adapt some of that stuff, and sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. We got to see Dick Grayson move away from Robin, and there's always kind of been a little bit of an animosity between Bruce and Dick. Bruce Wayne being Batman. My only issue with the way they portrayed Dick Grayson is Dick is not a dark and brooding guy. He's always been more positive and upbeat, and they kind of got away from that a little bit. Curran Walters as Jason Todd, I think it was an interesting choice for how they portrayed Jason Todd. They did try to do their version of Death in the Family a little bit, but it was a little bit, again, disjointed for the most part. And I thought, they did a lot of things right, but you never really get to see that team version of the Titans. They even, over the course of the second season, incorporated Ian Glenn, who a lot of people will know as Jorah Mormont from Game of Thrones, as Bruce Wayne. And he never suited up as Batman, and he never really struck me as a decent Bruce Wayne. Nothing against him, but he was trying to do a bad kind of American accent, and he almost had this look of this serious version of Adam West, minus the poof, pow, bam sound effects or whatever. His Bruce Wayne always kind of felt out of place, but a lot of the show did. They tried to get the Red Hood, and it was the first version of Red Hood that we get to see, and not necessarily bad. It felt like it took a long time for Dick Grayson to become Nightwing, and when he did, they left out some of the references of how he actually came up with that name. They did incorporate Superboy into the show, and I think the first couple of times that they used Superboy was better than how he ended up. The look is the one thing that the show definitely got right. From a TV superhero show, costumes are always kind of iffy. The one thing that Titans did very well was nail all the costumes. Granted, Beast Boy didn't get his until the fourth season, but it was fairly comic book accurate when it did come about. I thought for the most part all their costumes looked pretty good, especially the various Robin costumes. Deathstroke looked spot on out of the comic book, and they didn't do much with Raven when she was dark, but when they turned her to the white version of Raven, I thought that looked pretty cool. The Nightwing suit looked cool, but to me it was just a little too armored, and I say that because Dick was an acrobat, and he was always really flexible and needed to be able to move, and I don't feel like this costume lent itself very well to that, but it certainly looked pretty cool, and it was cool to finally see a version of Nightwing on some form of screen, because it's been teased in a lot of different ways and we never really got to it. The third season was interesting. They brought in a different version of Barbara Gordon and changed that story around a little bit, and then you had the Scarecrow, who was the mastermind behind everything in the third season, and Batman goes away and breaks his rule and kills the Joker after Jason Todd gets mutilated and beat up and left for dead or whatnot. They took a lot of liberties with the story, and in the process of that, it was just a very disjointed show from start to finish. I give them an A+ for getting the costumes right. But then in the fourth season, you introduce a new Tim Drake version of Robin, and then you kind of forced him into, well, he's gay, because we need a gay character on the show. And Tim Drake is not gay in the comic book. He's not a gay Robin at all. It was just a kind of a bad idea, I think, and it felt forced and it felt unnecessary. So while I give Titans some points for some occasional drama here and there, and it was cool to see these characters on the screen for the first time, I think the best I could possibly give this show is maybe a C, maybe a C- for all its disjointedness, and it's part of the DC universe that I am kind of happy that they are resetting. I did, like I said, like Brendan Thwaites, and some of the rest of the cast wasn't bad, but this was just never the version of this team that I wanted to see, and even in the ending, it just kind of felt Like, again, you brought in this huge villain like Trigon, who is essentially Satan, for lack of a better term, and it's a Justice League level threat that never gets treated like a Justice League level threat. And I kind of wish they would leave villains like this out of TV, because you just don't have the budget to do them. In Smallville, in the end, they tried to do Apocalypse, and that was just a bad idea because you don't have the budget for it. I think Titans had the same problem with Trigon. On that kind of budget, it's just impossible to do. So while Titans, I'm glad, is over, the one show that I do hope hangs around a little longer is Superman and Lois. And you had a chance for Superboy to, you know, kind of interact with the Superman. They never really show him. They just more tease him, and you see him in glimpses. It would have been cool for Tyler Hoechlin to maybe show up as Superman in this to interact, but it's over. It's done with. It never happened, or it's not going to happen. And Titans, you know, we'll call it a A for effort, a C- at best. And, you know, if you don't watch it, you're probably not missing anything. If you did watch it, maybe you loved it, or maybe you're kind of feeling the same way I did, where, it was all right, but I don't know why I devoted 4 seasons of my time to this. There you go. That's what I got. Like, follow, please, at Stephen Lewis on air, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, you can like and support the channel. That would be cool, too. Have a great night.